The station near Neptune had been silent for 17 hours when the emergency alert reached Earth Command. At first, nobody thought much of it. Deep space stations often lost communication for short periods because of radiation storms or damaged relay systems. But this time felt different. The mining station, known as Outpost K-12, was one of the most advanced stations in the outer system. It had backup systems for everything. Losing contact for almost an entire day was nearly impossible. Inside the command center on Earth, officers stared at the frozen signal on their screens. The last transmission from K-12 was incomplete. It carried only static, heavy breathing, and one broken sentence. "It's moving toward us." Then silence. Commander Elias Ward stood near the back of the room with his arms crossed while others argued around him. He was known for staying calm even when things went wrong. Years of navigating dangerous outer system routes had taught him not to panic too early. But even he felt uneasy. A senior officer finally turned toward him. "You're the closest qualified commander available," she said. "Take a small crew and investigate." Ward nodded once. "Any signs of attack?" "None." "Pirates?" "No evidence." He looked back at the frozen transmission. Something about it bothered him. The fear in the operator's voice sounded real. Not panic. Not confusion. Pure fear. Within 2 hours, Ward and his crew departed aboard a patrol ship called the Horizon Lance. It was fast, heavily shielded, and designed for long-range missions. The journey toward Neptune would still take several days using jump routes. The crew remained unusually quiet during most of the trip. Everyone aboard had seen the transmission. Nobody wanted to say what they were thinking. As the ship crossed deeper into the outer system, the darkness outside the windows became almost endless. The stars looked distant and cold. Neptune itself appeared like a giant blue shadow floating in silence. Ward stood on the bridge, watching the navigation display. "Distance to Outpost K-12? He asked. 40 minutes, the pilot replied. "Still no signal?" "Nothing." Ward slowly exhaled. The station should have appeared on long-range scanners by now. Normally, mining stations filled space with traffic signals, automated messages, and cargo routes. But the scanner screen looked dead. Too dead. One of the younger crew members shifted nervously. "Sir, does this remind you of anything?" Ward looked at him. "No ghost stories today." A few weak laughs spread across the bridge, but the tension stayed. Then the scanner officer suddenly leaned forward. "Contact." Everyone turned. "What kind of contact?" Ward asked. The officer frowned. I don't know." The screen displayed a massive shape near the station. At first, it looked like sensor interference. But as the readings stabilized, the bridge fell silent. The object was enormous. Far bigger than any ship in the modern fleet. Ward stepped closer to the display. "Size estimate." The officer swallowed hard. "Approximately 20 kilometers." Nobody spoke. That size was impossible. Even the largest cargo carriers were tiny compared to this thing. "Could it be debris?" someone whispered. Ward shook his head slowly. Debris didn't hold formation, and this object was moving, very slowly, toward Neptune. The Horizon Lance continued forward carefully while tension spread through every corner of the ship. The closer they moved, the clearer the object became on the scanners. It wasn't debris. It was a ship, a gigantic warship. Its surface looked dark and scarred, like ancient metal drifting through space for centuries. Massive structures lined its sides. Some sections appeared damaged. Others still glowed faintly with power. But what truly disturbed the crew was the design. The ship carried old human military markings. Ward stared silently at the screen. "That symbol," the pilot muttered. Nobody needed to explain it. Every officer in the fleet recognized the faded emblem. Titan-class, a name that belonged in history books. The Titan-class warships were legends from humanity's oldest wars. Massive ships built during an age so violent that most records had been sealed by governments centuries ago. Officially, every Titan-class vessel had been destroyed long ago. Yet one was floating right in front of them. Alive. The station finally appeared ahead. And something was terribly wrong. Outpost K-12 drifted without power. Entire sections were dark. No movement appeared in the windows. Cargo doors remained half open as if evacuation had started but never finished. Ward felt a chill run through him. "Prepare docking team," he ordered. Minutes later, Ward and 4 crew members entered the station through an emergency airlock. The silence inside felt unnatural. Normally, mining stations were loud places filled with machinery, voices, and engine vibrations. But K-12 sounded dead. Only the faint hum of backup power echoed through the halls. The lights flickered overhead. One crew member aimed a flashlight down the corridor. "Hello?" No answer. They moved carefully through the station. Equipment lay scattered across the floor. Food trays floated near the ceiling from failed gravity systems. One wall carried deep burn marks as if something extremely hot had passed through it. But there were no bodies, no blood, no signs of battle. Just emptiness. Ward reached the control center and froze. Every screen inside displayed the same message. "They are coming back. Again. And again. And again." The words repeated endlessly across hundreds of monitors. One crew member whispered, "Who wrote this?" Another pointed toward the corner of the room. A station operator sat strapped into a chair. Dead. His face looked pale with fear, eyes still open toward the screens. Ward stepped closer carefully. There were no wounds on the body, no signs of violence. The man looked like he had simply died terrified. Then the station speakers suddenly activated. Static exploded through the halls. Several crew members jumped. A broken voice crackled from the speakers. "Don't let them see Earth." The transmission cut out. Then silence returned. Ward felt every muscle tighten. "Source?" he asked. "No idea," a crew member replied nervously. "The system's damaged." Suddenly the lights dimmed. The station trembled slightly. Back aboard the Horizon Lance, the pilot's voice burst through Ward's communicator. "Commander, you need to return now." "What happened?" "That ship moved." Ward's expression hardened. "How close?" "It's heading directly toward the station." The crew hurried back through the corridors toward the airlock. The entire station now groaned softly around them as if reacting to the approaching vessel. When they finally launched away from K-12, the massive warship filled the darkness outside. It was even larger up close. The Titan-class vessel moved with terrifying slowness, almost like a sleeping giant waking after centuries. Lights across its surface began turning on one by one. Thousands of them. Ward stared through the cockpit window in disbelief. "Power levels increasing," the scanner officer warned. "Rapidly." Then something else appeared on sensors. Multiple ships. Small alien scout vessels hidden behind Neptune's moon. Watching. The scouts immediately changed direction the moment the Titan-class ship powered up. "They're retreating," the pilot said. "Fast." Ward narrowed his eyes. Alien scout ships were common near human territory. Most civilizations monitored one another constantly. But these ships weren't simply leaving. They were running, as if terrified. One final signal suddenly burst across every communication channel. Unlike the damaged station transmission, this signal sounded clean, ancient, cold. Titan-class vessel confirmed. The voice announced, "Humanity has awakened." Then the transmission ended. No source identified. No explanation. The bridge remained silent. Even the experienced officers looked shaken now. Ward slowly sat in the command chair while staring at the enormous warship ahead of them. Part of him wanted to turn the ship around immediately. Another part needed answers. Because something about this situation felt wrong on a level he could not explain. Why would a legendary warship suddenly appear near Neptune after centuries? Who sent the message? And why were alien ships fleeing in fear? The scanner officer suddenly looked up again. "Commander!" Ward turned. "There's movement inside the Titan-class vessel." "How many?" The officer's face went pale. "Thousands." At that exact moment, the colossal ship fully powered on. A deep vibration rolled through space itself. Then one massive engine at the rear ignited with blue light bright enough to illuminate the darkness around Neptune. And for the first time in centuries, the ancient warship began moving toward Earth. The moment the Titan-class warship started moving, every system aboard the Horizon Lance shook from the force of its engines. It felt impossible that something so massive could even travel through space. The glowing blue light behind the ancient vessel stretched across the darkness near Neptune like a second sunrise. Nobody on the bridge spoke for several seconds. Commander Elias Ward kept his eyes fixed on the giant ship ahead. Even after years in deep space, he had never seen anything that made him feel this small. "How fast is it moving?" he finally asked. The scanner officer checked the readings twice before answering. "Slow for now, but its power output keeps increasing." "Destination?" The officer hesitated. "Current path points directly toward Earth." A heavy silence filled the bridge again. The pilot slowly turned toward Ward. "Sir, if that thing reaches the inner system, every defense fleet will panic." Ward already knew that. Humanity had not seen a Titan-class vessel in centuries. Most people believed they were myths created during the old wars to scare enemies. Entire generations grew up hearing stories about gigantic ships capable of destroying fleets alone. And now one was flying toward Earth. Alive. Suddenly, another alarm sounded. "Incoming transmission from Central Command," the communication officer announced. Ward nodded. "Put it through." The face of Fleet Director Orlan appeared on the main screen. The older man looked more stressed than usual. "We received your reports," Orlan said immediately. "Tell me this is a mistake." "I wish I could," Ward replied calmly. "The ship is real." Behind Orlan, officers rushed around a crowded command center. Multiple holographic displays showed the image of the massive warship from different angles. "The Galactic Council already knows," Orlan said quietly. Ward frowned. "That fast?" Alien scout ships transmitted emergency alerts across nearby systems. Half the galaxy is watching this situation now. The bridge crew exchanged nervous looks. The Galactic Council was the largest political alliance in known space. Dozens of alien civilizations worked together there, including humanity. News reaching them this quickly meant panic was already spreading. Orlan leaned closer to the screen. "Listen carefully. Do not engage the vessel. Maintain distance and continue tracking." "What about communication attempts?" "We tried. No response." Ward glanced toward the giant ship outside the window. Something inside that vessel woke up. "We know." That answer surprised him. "You know?" Orlan nodded slowly. "Long-range scans show life signs throughout the ship." "How many?" "Estimated 12,000. Several crew members looked stunned. 12,000 people sleeping inside a dead warship for centuries sounded impossible. Before Ward could ask another question, another voice suddenly interrupted the call. "Director, the council session has begun." Orlan looked frustrated. "They want answers," he muttered. Ward could almost imagine the chaos inside the council chambers right now. Alien governments feared humanity during the old wars. Even though peace had lasted for generations, old memories clearly remained. Orlan looked back toward the screen. "You are now attached directly to council operations. Stay available." The transmission ended. One of the younger crew members broke the silence first. 12,000 people, he whispered. "How are they still alive?" Ward had no answer. The Horizon Lance continued following the Titan-class ship from a safe distance as it crossed deeper into the solar system. Hours passed, then days. The giant vessel never accelerated fully. It simply moved forward at a steady pace, silent and cold. Yet its presence alone created fear everywhere it appeared. Civilian ships changed routes to avoid it. Mining stations shut down operations. News channels across human space flooded with theories. Some claimed the ship carried survivors from an ancient war. Others believed it was fully automated. A few even said it was a warning. Ward ignored the rumors and focused on the mission. But deep down, even he felt uneasy. The warship almost seemed aware of everything around it. Watching, waiting. On the third day, another transmission arrived from the Galactic Council. This time, They requested Ward personally appear during a live emergency session. The bridge crew gathered quietly as the communication screen activated. The council chamber appeared massive even through holograms. Rows of alien representatives filled the circular room, each species sitting beneath the symbol of its civilization. Normally, council meetings stayed calm and controlled. Not today. Voices echoed everywhere. Arguments erupted between delegates. Some looked frightened. Others looked furious. The moment Ward's image appeared, several representatives stopped speaking. One older alien with silver markings across his face leaned forward immediately. "Commander Ward," he said sharply, "confirm the Titan-class vessel remains operational." Ward nodded once. "Confirmed." Murmurs spread through the chamber. Another representative spoke next. "Has the vessel shown hostile intent?" "No." "Has it answered communication attempts?" "No." A different council member slammed a hand against their desk. "Then why is it heading toward Earth?" Ward kept his voice calm. "Unknown." The chamber erupted again. Ward watched carefully as several older delegates remained completely silent during the arguments. Unlike the younger representatives, these elders looked deeply disturbed, as if they recognized something others did not. Finally, a tall figure near the center stood up. The entire chamber quieted immediately. Council Elder Valor, one of the oldest living members of the Alliance. Valor spoke slowly. "Many of you were born after the final border wars," he said. "You grew up during peace. But some of us remember the age of the Titans." Nobody interrupted him. "The Titan-class fleet was not created for defense," Valor continued quietly. "It was built for extinction-level warfare." The room stayed silent. Ward noticed even the human delegates looked uncomfortable. Valor's eyes shifted toward the screen displaying the ancient ship. One Titan-class vessel once defeated an entire battle group without support. Another disappeared alongside 3 enemy moons. Entire systems surrendered the moment these ships arrived. A younger representative laughed nervously. "Old stories." Valor turned slowly toward him. "No," he replied coldly. "History." The nervous laughter stopped immediately. Ward crossed his arms while listening carefully. Most human military records from that era remained classified. Even experienced commanders rarely learned full details about the ancient wars. Valor looked back toward Ward. "Commander," he asked carefully, "has the vessel activated external weapons?" "No." "Shield systems?" "Yes." The elder closed his eyes briefly. "That confirms it," he whispered. Several delegates demanded answers at once. But before Valor could continue, alarms suddenly echoed across the council chamber. An officer rushed toward the center platform. "We have a new transmission." "Source?" someone asked. The officer looked pale. "The Titan-class vessel itself." The chamber instantly fell silent. Even Ward felt his heartbeat rise. For several seconds, nothing happened. Then the screen changed. A dark hallway appeared. Flickering lights revealed metal walls covered in old military markings. Static distorted the image as footsteps echoed somewhere in the distance. Slow, heavy. The entire council watched silently. Then the camera feed stabilized. A figure stood at the end of the corridor. Human, wearing an old black military uniform. The man looked older, with gray streaks in his hair and a scar across one side of his face. His expression remained calm, almost emotionless, but his eyes carried exhaustion far deeper than age. He stared directly into the camera. "This is Admiral Seraph Kane of the Titan-class vessel Dominion." Several council members visibly froze. Ward noticed Valor grip the edge of his desk tightly. Kane continued speaking. "To all surviving members of the Galactic Council, your fears are justified." Panic spread instantly through the chamber. Some representatives started shouting. Others demanded the transmission be cut. But Kane kept speaking calmly through the chaos. "The enemy has returned." Those 4 words silenced the room again. Ward frowned slightly. "Enemy?" Kane's tired eyes shifted slightly downward before returning to the camera. "We detected their signals beyond the outer dark zones 6 months ago. Earth Command failed to respond because your systems were already compromised. The Council erupted again. What enemy? What does compromised mean? Explain yourself. Kane ignored them. The Titan fleet was never destroyed, he said. We were waiting. Ward stared at the screen carefully. The Admiral spoke like a man carrying a burden for far too long. Then the transmission suddenly glitched. For a split second, another image flashed behind Kane. A massive damaged structure floating in darkness. Not a ship. Something far larger. Then the signal stabilized again. Kane's expression hardened. You have little time left, he warned. The screen went black. Silence filled both the council chamber and the Horizon Lance Bridge. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. Finally, one council representative whispered the question everyone feared. What exactly is coming? After Admiral Seraph Kane's transmission ended, fear spread across the galaxy faster than any official warning could control. News stations interrupted every broadcast. Trade routes closed overnight. Entire colonies near the outer systems started evacuating without waiting for government orders. And everywhere, one question echoed through human space and alien territory alike. What enemy was powerful enough to frighten a Titan-class commander? Commander Elias Ward stood alone inside the observation deck of the Horizon Lance, staring at the massive Dominion warship ahead of them. Even after days of following it, the ship still felt unreal. It moved through space like an ancient beast slowly waking from a long sleep. The glowing engines behind it lit the darkness around Jupiter's outer orbit. Ward folded his arms tightly. Something about Admiral Kane bothered him. The man didn't sound like someone preparing for war. He sounded like someone returning to finish one. The bridge doors slid open behind Ward. It's happening again, the scanner officer said nervously. Ward turned immediately. What now? Another colony disappeared. Ward followed him quickly back to the bridge. The main screen displayed a human settlement near the edge of the Helios sector. Only hours earlier, the colony had been active with over 40,000 residents. Now it was dark. Every signal gone. No distress call. No debris. Nothing. It looked abandoned. The communication officer shook her head slowly. 3 colonies this week. Pirates? Someone asked quietly. Ward didn't answer. Pirates left damage. This looked different. Almost clean. As the bridge crew worked through reports, another message arrived from Earth Command. Priority Level 1. Ward opened the transmission immediately. Fleet Director Orlan appeared again, but this time he looked exhausted. His uniform was wrinkled, and dark circles sat under his eyes. The Council is splitting apart, Orlan said without greeting. Ward frowned. Over Kane's message? Over fear. Orlan activated a holographic map beside him. Multiple star systems flashed red across the galaxy. Several alien governments believe humanity planned this. Ward stared at him. That makes no sense. It doesn't matter, Orlan replied bitterly. People panic first and think later. The map zoomed toward the outer sectors. These disappearances started months ago, Orlan continued. But reports were buried. Buried by who? Orlan hesitated for a moment. That's the problem. We don't know anymore. Ward felt tension rise in his chest. The more they learned, the worse everything became. Orlan lowered his voice. Commander, the Dominion requested permission for you to board. The bridge became silent. Ward blinked once. Me? Yes. Why? They didn't explain. Ward looked through the window toward the gigantic warship outside. The idea of entering that ancient vessel felt dangerous for reasons he couldn't explain. But if answers existed anywhere, they were inside that ship. When do they want me aboard? He asked. Orlan answered quietly. Immediately. Less than 2 hours later, a small shuttle carried Ward across the endless darkness toward the Dominion. The closer he moved toward the Titan-class ship, the more overwhelming its size became. Entire cities could have fit inside its structure. Huge weapon systems lined its surface like mountains of metal. Deep scars covered parts of the hull, evidence of battles fought long before Ward was born. The shuttle finally approached an enormous docking bay. As the doors opened, Ward stepped out slowly. Rows of armed soldiers waited silently inside. Their black uniforms matched the ones from Kane's transmission. None of them spoke. None even moved. But their eyes followed Ward carefully. One officer stepped forward. "This way, Commander." Ward followed through long metal corridors lit by dim white lights. Everything aboard the Dominion looked old but perfectly maintained. No unnecessary decorations. No civilian comforts. Only function. The deeper they walked, the stranger the ship felt. Large sections remained sealed behind heavy blast doors. Massive screens displayed ancient military symbols. Crew members moved quietly through the halls with calm discipline. Nobody looked surprised to see him, as if they had expected his arrival for years. Finally, the officer stopped outside a large chamber. "The Admiral is waiting." The doors opened slowly. Admiral Seraph Kane stood near a giant window overlooking space. Up close, he looked even older than on the transmission. The scar across his face stretched from his temple to his jaw. But despite his age, there was something heavy about his presence. Like a man who had survived too much. Kane turned slowly toward Ward. "Commander." Ward nodded respectfully. "Admiral." For a moment, neither man spoke. Then Kane gestured toward the stars outside. "Beautiful, isn't it?" Ward glanced out the window. Jupiter floated in the distance like a glowing giant surrounded by storms. "Hard to enjoy it lately," Ward admitted. Kane gave a faint smile. "That feeling never really changes." Ward studied him carefully. "You said the enemy returned," he said directly. "What enemy?" Kane's expression became serious again. "The Varric." The name meant nothing to Ward. Kane noticed immediately. "Of course," he muttered. "History erased them." He walked toward a control panel and activated a hologram in the center of the room. Images appeared instantly. Burning planets. Destroyed fleets. Cities reduced to ash. Ward stared silently. "This war began nearly 500 years ago," Kane explained. "The Varric didn't conquer worlds for resources or territory. They erased civilizations completely." The hologram shifted again. Strange black ships filled the screen. Their designs looked unnatural compared to human vessels. Sharp edges curved in impossible ways. "They attacked without warning," Kane continued. "And they learned quickly. Every battle made them harder to defeat." Ward crossed his arms. "Why hide this from humanity?" "Because fear creates chaos," Kane answered. After the war ended, the Council agreed to seal most records. They wanted peace. New generations grew up believing the Titans were myths. Ward stared at the images carefully. "But the war never ended, did it?" Kane looked at him quietly. "No." The room fell silent. Then Kane activated another recording. This one looked recent. A colony appeared on the screen. Families walked through market streets. Children played near transport stations. Then the image distorted. Dark shapes descended from the sky. Power failed across the colony instantly. People started running. Seconds later, the entire recording cut to black. Ward frowned deeply. "That was Helios Station." "Yes. You had this footage the whole time?" "We recovered it 3 weeks ago." Ward felt anger rising now. 3 weeks? People are disappearing while governments argue politics. Kane's voice remained calm. "The governments are already compromised." Ward looked at him sharply. "What does that mean?" Kane hesitated for the first time. Then he spoke carefully. "The Varric infiltrate civilizations before attacking directly. They replace leaders, sabotage systems, create division." Ward shook his head slightly. "You're saying members of the Council work for them?" "I'm saying some may not even know they're helping." Before Ward could answer, alarms suddenly echoed through the chamber. Kane turned immediately toward another screen. An officer's voice filled the room. "Admiral, emergency transmission from Council space." The hologram changed. A fleet battle appeared. Multiple alien ships burned across space while smaller black vessels moved between them with terrifying speed. Ward stepped closer. "What system is that?" Council Border Sector 9, Kane answered grimly. The recording continued. Entire warships suddenly lost power mid-battle before exploding. Civilian stations drifted helplessly. Then something enormous appeared behind the attacking fleet. Ward's stomach tightened. Another massive structure. Even larger than the Dominion. But this one looked alive somehow. Dark. Moving slowly through space like a giant shadow. The recording ended abruptly. Ward stared at the frozen screen. How many of those things exist? Kane answered quietly. We hoped only one. Before Ward could respond, another officer rushed into the room. Admiral, emergency report from Earth. Kane turned sharply. What happened? The officer looked pale. Long-range defense satellites detected unknown signals near Mars. Ward's heart sank immediately. Kane closed his eyes briefly like a man expecting bad news he no longer had strength to fight. Then he looked toward Ward. They found Earth sooner than expected. The Dominion suddenly changed direction beneath their feet. Massive engines roared alive across the ancient warship. And for the first time since waking from centuries of silence, the Titan-class vessel prepared for war again. The Dominion moved through space like a storm no one could stop. Its giant engines burned bright across the darkness as the ancient Titan-class warship rushed toward Earth. Every station and fleet near the inner system tracked its movement with fear and confusion. Commander Elias Ward stood on the main bridge beside Admiral Seraph Kane while alarms flashed across multiple screens. Unknown signals multiplying near Mars, one officer reported. How many? Kane asked. The officer looked unsettled. Too many to count clearly. Another screen lit up with emergency broadcasts from civilian stations across the solar system. Cargo ships were abandoning routes. Families were trying to leave orbital cities. Earth's defense network had already entered full combat alert. Ward watched everything silently. Humanity was panicking. And the worst part was that nobody fully understood what they were preparing for. Suddenly, another transmission arrived from the Galactic Council. Kane's expression hardened immediately. Put it through. The image of the council chamber appeared once more. But this time the atmosphere looked far worse than before. Representatives shouted over each other, while security officers moved throughout the room. Several seats were empty now. Ward noticed Elder Valor standing near the center platform. The old council member looked exhausted. You are approaching restricted council defense territory, one alien representative announced sharply. The Dominion must stop immediately. Kane stared calmly at the screen. Move your fleets. You are not authorized to enter the inner systems with a Titan-class warship. Ward stepped forward slightly. You've seen the attacks yourselves. Another representative slammed a hand against their desk. And we've seen humanity hide this fleet for centuries. Murmurs spread across the chamber. Fear had turned into suspicion now. Kane's voice remained cold and steady. If we stop moving, Earth dies. One of the younger delegates pointed angrily toward the screen. Or maybe this is exactly what humanity planned from the beginning. Ward clenched his jaw. That's enough, he snapped. But the chamber erupted again. Some wanted the Dominion destroyed immediately. Others argued for negotiation. A few begged for evacuation plans. Only Valor stayed quiet. Finally, the elder raised his hand slowly. The chamber became silent. Valor looked directly at Kane. Tell me honestly, he said, if the Varrock reach Earth, can your ship stop them? For the first time, Kane hesitated. Then he answered quietly, not alone. A heavy silence followed. Everyone understood what that meant. The Varrock were stronger than feared. Before another word could be spoken, warning alarms suddenly exploded inside the council chamber itself. Lights flickered violently. Officers rushed toward control stations. What's happening? Someone shouted. An emergency operator turned pale. Defense fleets just arrived. Whose fleets? The answer came seconds later. Council Military Command. Ward frowned. Then his blood ran cold as dozens of warships appeared behind the council station on the holographic map. Massive fleets. Fully armed. One message followed immediately across all channels. Titan-class vessel Dominion. Power down your weapons and prepare for surrender. The bridge aboard the Dominion became silent. Ward looked toward Kane in disbelief. They're attacking us? Kane did not look surprised. They fear us more than the Varric. Outside the giant bridge windows, long-range scanners displayed the growing fleet surrounding them near the edge of the inner system. Hundreds of ships, destroyers, heavy carriers, defense cruisers, enough firepower to wipe out most civilizations. Yet the Dominion continued moving forward without slowing down. An officer looked toward Kane carefully. Orders. Kane's face became unreadable. Maintain course. Another transmission arrived immediately. If you proceed further, the Council fleet commander warned, we will open fire. Ward stepped closer to Kane. If this turns into a battle, millions will panic. Kane answered quietly. They already have. The next few seconds felt endless. Then the first shot came. A bright beam of energy crossed the darkness and struck the Dominion's outer shields. The giant ship barely reacted. Several more blasts followed immediately after. Then the entire Council fleet opened fire. Space itself lit up with explosions. Ward grabbed the nearest console as vibrations rolled through the Dominion. Shield status? Kane asked calmly. 98%. The bridge crew exchanged stunned looks. No modern ship could survive that kind of attack so easily. Outside, hundreds of smaller vessels continued firing while surrounding the giant Titan-class warship from every direction. Kane finally spoke again. Disable their weapons. No anger. No panic. Just calm. The Dominion responded instantly. Massive energy waves burst outward from the ancient vessel like invisible storms. Within seconds, entire sections of the attacking fleet lost power. One by one, ships drifted helplessly through space. Weapons dead. Engines silent. Ward stared in disbelief. What was that? Old technology, Kane answered quietly. The battle should have ended there. But then something changed. One officer suddenly shouted from the scanner station. New contacts. How many? Ward asked. The officer looked terrified. Hundreds. Dark shapes emerged from deep space behind the Council fleet. Black ships. Varric. They moved fast. Far faster than any human or alien vessel. The Council fleet immediately broke formation in panic. It's a trap, someone whispered. The Varric ships slammed directly into the battlefield without warning. Bright explosions filled the darkness. Several Council cruisers vanished instantly under concentrated attacks. Others lost power and drifted burning through space. The Varric ignored surrender signals. Ignored retreat attempts. They attacked everything. Ward watched a damaged carrier explode on the main screen while escape pods scattered into space. The Dominion's alarms roared again. Enemy weapons locked. Kane stepped toward the center platform. All batteries return fire. For the first time since awakening, the Titan-class warship attacked at full power. The entire ship shook violently. Then giant weapon systems along the Dominion's surface unleashed blinding streams of energy across space. 3 Varric ships disappeared instantly. Not damaged. Gone. The battlefield became chaos. Council fleets tried retreating while Varric ships hunted them relentlessly. Explosions covered the darkness around Mars as debris spread in every direction. Ward gripped the edge of a console tightly. He had seen battles before. Nothing like this. Then the scanners detected something worse. A massive distortion appeared beyond the battlefield. Space itself seemed to bend unnaturally. Kane's expression darkened immediately. No, he whispered. Slowly, another giant structure emerged from the distortion. Ward felt his chest tighten. The object was enormous. Far larger than the Dominion. Its black surface moved strangely, almost like living metal shifting in darkness. Red lights glowed across its body like giant eyes opening one after another. Even the Varric ships around it changed formation instantly, almost like soldiers greeting their leader. The bridge crew stood frozen. One officer whispered shakily, "What is that thing?" Kane answered softly, "A harbinger." The giant structure continued moving forward slowly. Every scanner aboard the Dominion overloaded trying to analyze it. Then a signal burst across every communication channel. Not words. Sounds. Low, deep, almost mechanical breathing. Several crew members covered their ears in pain. Ward felt a sharp pressure inside his head before the signal suddenly stopped. Then Earth's defense satellites began exploding across the inner system. One after another. Entire orbital platforms vanished in seconds. Panic spread through communication channels instantly. Civilian ships collided while trying to flee. Emergency broadcasts filled every screen. Ward looked toward Kane. "Can we stop that thing?" Kane remained silent for several moments. Then he finally answered. "We have to." The Dominion accelerated directly toward the Harbinger. Behind them, surviving Council ships slowly regrouped. Their commanders had finally realized the truth. This was not humanity's attack. This was survival. One damaged alien cruiser opened a direct channel to the Dominion. The captain appeared wounded and shaken. We will assist." Another ship joined moments later. Then another. Soon dozens of surviving vessels formed behind the Titan-class warship. Former enemies. Now united by fear. Ward watched the growing fleet carefully. Maybe it was already too late. But for the first time since this nightmare began, humanity was no longer standing alone. The Harbinger suddenly turned toward Earth. Its surface opened slowly across the center. A giant red light began forming inside. Charging. Kane's expression turned deadly serious. "All ships," he ordered calmly. "Prepare for full assault." The final battle for Earth had begun. The giant red light inside the Harbinger continued growing brighter as the massive structure moved slowly toward Earth. Commander Elias Ward stood frozen for a moment on the Dominion's bridge, staring at the terrifying image on the main screen. The weapon charging inside the alien structure looked large enough to split a moon apart. And it was aimed directly at humanity's home. "All fleets moving into attack range," an officer reported quickly. Outside the bridge windows, the darkness of space had become a battlefield filled with fire and drifting debris. Damaged Council ships regrouped behind the Dominion while smaller Varric vessels circled around the Harbinger like predators protecting their leader. Some ships burned silently. Others drifted powerless. Emergency calls filled communication channels non-stop. But despite the fear spreading everywhere, something had changed. The surviving fleets were finally fighting together. Human, alien, old enemies standing side by side. Admiral Seraph Kane stepped toward the center command platform aboard the Dominion. His tired eyes focused on the giant Harbinger ahead. "Distance?" he asked calmly. "Closing fast. Main cannon charge? 91%. Ward looked toward Kane. "Will it be enough?" The Admiral stayed silent for several seconds. Then he answered honestly, "I don't know." That answer hit harder than any alarm. For the first time since meeting Kane, Ward saw something beneath the Admiral's calm expression. Fear. Not for himself. For everyone. Suddenly, another shockwave rolled across the battlefield as the Harbinger fired smaller energy bursts toward nearby fleets. Entire sections of space lit up white. One Council cruiser disappeared instantly. Another split apart while escape pods scattered away from the explosion. The bridge crew aboard the Dominion worked rapidly through the chaos. Enemy fighters approaching starboard side. Defense batteries responding. Shield pressure increasing. Ward grabbed a nearby console to steady himself as the giant Titan-class warship shook under repeated attacks. Despite its massive power, even the Dominion was beginning to struggle. One officer turned toward Kane urgently. "Admiral, Earth Command requesting immediate evacuation orders." Kane's face hardened. "How long until civilian transports clear orbit?" "Not fast enough." The Harbinger's main weapon continued charging brighter. Ward suddenly understood. There would never be enough time. Billions of people still remained on Earth. Families, children, entire cities staring into the night sky, watching fleets burn above them. Kane slowly activated a galaxy-wide transmission channel. Every bridge on every surviving ship received the signal. The Admiral stood silently for a brief moment before speaking. This is Admiral Seraph Kane of the Titan-class vessel Dominion. Even during the battle, communication channels became quiet. People listened. For many across the galaxy, this was the first time hearing the voice of the man who once terrified entire civilizations. Kane continued calmly. 5 centuries ago, humanity faced extinction. We survived because others stood beside us. Images of the battlefield appeared alongside his broadcast. Human ships fought beside alien cruisers. Rescue craft pulled survivors from burning wreckage without caring which species they belonged to. The Varric returned today believing fear will divide us again, Kane said. They believe civilizations only fight for themselves. Another explosion flashed behind the Dominion as enemy ships attacked again. Kane never looked away from the camera. They are wrong. Ward watched silently as the old admiral spoke. Not like a soldier, like a man carrying the weight of history itself. For too long, Kane continued, the galaxy remembered humanity only for war, but survival was never about destruction. It was about protecting those who could not protect themselves. Across the battlefield, more ships slowly moved into formation around the Dominion. Damaged fleets returned despite the danger. Alien commanders who once demanded humanity's surrender now prepared to fight beside them until the end. Kane's voice lowered slightly. If this is our final stand, then we stand together. The transmission ended. Silence followed for only a second. Then dozens of fleets answered. One by one. Human defense groups, Council survivors, outer colony patrol ships, even civilian vessels, all moving toward the Harbinger. Ward felt something shift inside him as he watched the fleet grow across the stars. Fear still existed, but now there was something stronger beside it. Determination. Suddenly, warning alarms screamed across the bridge. The Harbinger weapon is fully charged. Everyone looked toward the main screen. The giant red light inside the alien structure had become blinding now. Energy twisted around it violently. Earth floated directly behind the massive alien vessel. Blue, peaceful, completely defenseless. Kane spoke immediately. All ships attack now. The final assault began. Thousands of weapons fired across space at once. Human destroyers launched missile barrages. Council cruisers unleashed heavy plasma fire. The Dominion itself shook violently as its massive cannons fired directly into the Harbinger's outer shell. For the first time, the alien structure reacted. Parts of its surface cracked open under the assault. Dark fragments drifted away into space, but it still continued charging. It's not enough, an officer shouted. Ward watched the battlefield desperately. Ship after ship exploded trying to break through the Varric defenses. Still the Harbinger moved forward. Still the weapon charged. Then Kane made a decision. Ward saw it in his eyes before he even spoke. Prepare collision course. The bridge fell silent instantly. One officer stared in disbelief. Admiral, do it. Ward stepped toward him quickly. You're talking about driving the Dominion directly into that thing. Kane nodded once. The Dominion's core still carries enough energy to destabilize the Harbinger. That will destroy this ship. Yes. The answer came without hesitation. Several officers looked shaken now. The Dominion was more than a warship. It was history, the last Titan-class vessel. And everyone aboard knew exactly what Kane was planning. Ward looked at him carefully. There has to be another way. Kane gave a faint, tired smile. There rarely is. The Admiral turned toward the crew. All non-essential personnel evacuate immediately. Nobody moved at first. Then slowly, officers began following orders. Escape routes activated across the ship. Smaller transport craft launched from the Dominion sides while the ancient warship accelerated toward the Harbinger. Ward stayed where he was. Kane noticed. You should leave too, Commander. Ward shook his head. Not happening. For the first time, Kane almost looked amused. You remind me of someone I served with long ago. Another violent impact shook the bridge. The Harbinger had started firing again. Several nearby fleets vanished under massive energy blasts. Time was running out. Suddenly, Earth appeared clearly through the main bridge window. Beautiful. Fragile. Billions of people below probably watching the battle unfold across the sky. Ward quietly realized something then. Most of them would never know the names of the people fighting for them today. They would only remember surviving. And maybe that was enough. The Dominion pushed forward faster now. The Harbinger finally reacted to the threat. Dozens of Varric ships swarmed toward the Titan-class vessel, firing non-stop. But surviving Allied fleets intercepted them. Alien cruisers sacrificed themselves to clear paths. Human fighters shielded evacuation craft. The entire battlefield had become one desperate effort to help the Dominion reach its target. Distance closing, an officer announced. Kane stood silently at the center platform. No fear remained on his face now. Only peace. Then the Harbinger turned fully toward them. The giant weapon at its center fired. A massive beam of red energy crossed space directly toward the Dominion. Ward braced himself. The Titan-class shields shattered instantly. Explosions tore through entire sections of the ship. Lights died across the bridge. Smoke filled the air. Several officers were thrown to the floor. But somehow, the Dominion kept moving. Kane slowly pulled himself upright while alarms screamed everywhere. Engine status? Critical. Core stability failing. The old admiral looked toward Earth one final time. Then toward the Harbinger. Good, he whispered. The Dominion accelerated one last time. Straight into the center of the alien structure. Everything became white. The explosion that followed lit the entire inner solar system. A massive wave of energy spread across space like a second sun rising beside Earth. Varric ships disappeared instantly. The Harbinger cracked apart from the inside. Then the giant alien structure finally collapsed into burning fragments drifting across the stars. Silence followed. Complete silence. The battle was over. Hours later, rescue fleets slowly moved through the wreckage field above Earth. Burning debris floated everywhere. Damaged ships searched for survivors. And in the middle of the battlefield, nothing remained of the Dominion. Commander Elias Ward sat quietly aboard a rescue cruiser staring through the window at the drifting fragments of metal shining in distant sunlight. One of the council officers approached him carefully. "We received reports," the officer said softly. "The remaining Varric forces are retreating beyond the outer systems." Ward nodded silently. The officer hesitated before speaking again. "The galaxy owes humanity a debt." Ward looked back toward the stars. "No," he answered quietly. "We all saved each other." Far below them, Earth slowly turned peacefully through the darkness. Alive. And across the galaxy, people would remember this day forever. Not because humanity brought war, but because when the entire galaxy stood on the edge of extinction, humanity refused to let the darkness win.